We've looked at some fairly delicate and obviously difficult matters as we've considered this chapter in 1 Corinthians. But I think the verses that we're going to read today are the most difficult to understand, possibly because they may relate to customs of the first century with which we're not familiar, although I'm not sure that that is true. Anyway, let's read 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verses 36 to 38. But if any man thinketh that he behaveth himself uncomely towards his virgin, if she pass the flower of her age, and need so require, let him do what he will, he sinneth not, let them marry. Nevertheless, he that standeth steadfast in his heart, having no necessity, but hath power over his own will, and hath so decreed in his heart that he will keep his virgin, doeth well. So then, he that giveth her in marriage doeth well, but he that giveth her not in marriage doeth better. I think it would be worthwhile to begin by looking at Paul's conclusion first of all. He that giveth her in marriage doeth well, but he that giveth her not in marriage doeth better. Verse 38. Now, whatever these particular verses, that is verses 36 and 37, mean, the conclusion is clear. It is good to be married, but in the context of serving the Lord, which this part of the chapter is actually focusing on, not being married is better. Now, we might not feel that it is better, but that's what the Word of God says in this passage. Now, one of the views in verses 36 and 37 draws on a custom of the first century and suggests that this is referring to a father who wonders what to do with his virgin daughter. Should he give her in marriage or not? The issue therefore would be the will of the father, whether he wants his daughter to marry or whether he wants her to remain unmarried. What she wants doesn't seem to come into it in this view. And that seems very strange to me, given what Paul wrote earlier in the chapter. It is better to marry than to burn, verse 9. It is the need to marry felt in the heart of the individual rather than their parent that is the main consideration. So I don't think that's what Paul is referring to in these verses. Another possibility is that Paul is referring to a man who is engaged, and I'm using the modern term. So Paul writes, if any man think that he behaveth himself uncomely towards his virgin, in verse 36. He wishes to know whether he should proceed to marry. Or it may simply be a man who has never married and who wonders whether he should do so. Darby translates the above phrase as he behaves unseemly to his virginity, his own virginity. These two scenarios are probably broadly similar. Now, whichever of the two it is, and perhaps it includes both, I think the issue is that the man is in a situation where he is concerned that his conduct is potentially dishonourable. It refers to him at risk of behaving himself uncomely or inappropriately. Now, if that is the case, Paul says that it is appropriate that he marry, particularly before the girl in question becomes too old to have children, if she pass the flower of her age, in verse 36 suggests that. Paul is clear that in that situation he sinneth not, also verse 36. However, there is the other possibility. He that standeth steadfast in his heart, having no necessity, but hath power over his own will, in verse 37. This is the situation where a man has determination to remain celibate and to serve the Lord without distraction. And in this situation, Darby's translation of keeping his own virginity probably makes more sense than he will keep his virgin in verse 37. So in conclusion, when Paul writes, he that giveth in marriage, or he who marriage, doeth well, verse 38, he means that he does well because he removes the potential cause of dishonour. But he who doesn't marry does better because he keeps himself in the best position for giving to the Lord his undistracted service.